So, as fits tradition with my video uploads, at no expense whatsoever, and no effort whatsoever, as if by magic, in part two, the Pi radio
Pi 460
has
radio
now been turned round, and we're going to have a
Yes.
look at the business
The
end of the
end.
radio. And I hope I don't hit that button again, Bob.
the
Right,
gubbins of
Right.
it too. So here
Bob,
is
Bob's
the,
finger is coming back out in vengeance. Right,
here is the inside of the radio.
Right.
You can see that it has got a large amount of components here, and then a shielded section which has got more components, and a valve which is half in and half out. It also has a little window where you can open this and have a look inside and see if the valve's lit up or not. That was its original
that was the purpose of this. Now,
that was the purpose of that.
if I can remember, again, I'm talking to a guy who eats, sleeps and breathes valves. They're under high tension.
Yes, yes.
But
High
it's battery, isn't it?
voltage.
So
It's still 110, 115 volts. You know, not too high.
so why did they only protect one side of it?
Well, it's not protection. No, it is to stop the radio waves in this section affecting
Interfering.
The radio waves in this section, because what we're doing with that reaction control, we're tuning this section in, the input side, a quite sensitive amplifier, and then it's feeding the second section, and the control in the front is doing a kind of mix and feeding some of that back into
Back
the
into itself.
section to do it. The interesting thing is, you remove this from here, considering its age
Wow.
and its time, this is actually made of aluminium, which I have never really seen much aluminium. Normally later on it would be mild steel plated, but to be aluminium on a thing from 1929,
So that would have been very, very expensive.
very expensive. Hence, the overall cost
Part of the cost.
of the thing.
Presume it's all point to point, hand soldered. and all
Yes,
this type of
it's
stuff,
all hand wired, in fact, and hand soldered. And in general, as you can see, the wiring, people refer to as right angle wiring. All the wires go effectively at right angles. And
Oh, I see that. Right. So what's the idea behind that? Is it just
well,
makes it near?
It makes it neater to go. And if it was a much higher frequency, you wouldn't get away with that. But at this low frequency, it doesn't matter.
What's the base of a? What's the thing that holds a valve called?
A valve holder.
Is that it?
Yes.
I was hoping it was going to be something more
The
exciting than
valves
that.
here are 5-pin valves. I shall remove one. And you can see it's got 5 pins.
Hang on a second. So there's a hole there that
Yes,
accepts a pin from the.
Well, they're arranged in a specific way. You see, it's in the range of a kind of cruciform cross thing.
Can we get in it? Sort of. Yeah,
Sort of,
yeah. My
It's
phone-
just only going one way around.
Right. So it's impossible to plug that into the valve holder.
The wrong way around.
The wrong way
yeah.
around. Right. Cool.
So there's 2 pins are for the filament of the valve that lights it up, 1 pin for the grid, and 1 pin for the anode. You're going to say to yourself, oh, where is the cathode? The cathode is connected to these filament pins. So the filament pins are also the cathode of the valve, an anode and a grid. This effectively 4 electrode connections on it, and you can see it's got this gettering inside it even in its time.
Gettering. So
Gettering.
it's
That's
a
the
mirrored
shiny-
surface. Right.
This shiny metal surface inside. What there is there is inside this, when it's been evacuated and have tried to take as much of the air out as they can on the device, they then put a small amount of magnesium in a holder inside the valve, and it goes into an electric furnace, which is a coil around it, and the electric furnace passes current into a small receptacle inside the valve.
As they're sucking the air out.
No, once it's
Well,
been
once
sucked out,
it's been sucked out. Okay.
and that once that heats that up, it then burns, and it burns any remaining oxygen inside the valve. And the deposited metal, which is burned, is what you see the shine is on the outside. When it starts to use up that and air starts to leak into it, it goes a milky colour. And as you can see around here, it's starting to go a milky colour on the inside of the valve.
So that's a sign that air started to come
It's
back.
starting to go, again, being this old.
You know about valves. That could that be original?
Oh yes, it looks fairly original. It may not be. It does say it's been tested. It's 100%. Whoever's tested it with
So,
something.
so that could be a bit of technology from 100 years
Yeah,
ago.
it could be. Nearly.
And that's the tuning.
This is a tuning control.
And that's a
more
big,
like
what did you say, a big
a
capacitor?
variable
A
capacitor.
variable capacitor.
And in fact, in these early days, they called them condensers rather than capacitors.
Right, okay.
But it's a variable one.
So as you turn the knobs at the
Yeah,
front.
the front. There's an airspace.
Right, so the airspace acts as
A dielectric.
A
The air is a dielectric. Two metal plates with air in between, and air is a dielectric on it. The capacitors, like this one here,
well,
and
that's a
some other
strangest
ones,
looking capacitor I've ever
they're
seen.
all individual and screwed onto dikes. See, this has got a wire missing
I
on the
wish
end of it,
my camera skills were better, Bobby would.
and it's got a lot of coils.
You also earlier on you mentioned that Pi made a lot of the components themselves.
Yes, in this case they made an awful lot of the components themselves. They made there was variable condensers or capacitors at the front. They made other capacitors like this one here. You can see it's got the logo on the side of it.
We'll pick up. Oh yeah, I think it has.
Yep. Yeah. The Pi Radio Company started in 1896.
That's bonkers.
Just making, they were instrument makers and became the turn of the century. George Pi, who started the company.
Instrument, scientific, electronic,
Yes,
musical.
no, not musical instruments, scientific
Scientific
instruments, etc.
instruments.
And radio was a new thing starting up, so they thought we'll get into this. I'd be more into the turn of the century, after the turn of the century, when things were just starting.
I suppose the
to
demand for this must have went absolutely bonkers.
Yes, but in those days, of course, even though it was the BBC in 1923, 22, 23 when it started, the radio stations weren't like Radio 4, Radio 2 or light programming like that. It was like 2LO calling, and the one in Glasgow, some like 5HL. There were numbers
That was the name of the
radio
station,
transmission. The one. So you would recognise which station it was, and then the man would be sitting in his dinner suit reading the news and all those things. So these were the radios that were used to there. And this has actually got an input from a gramophone, electric pickup,
fantastic.
which could be switched to there or
So what does
switched
that
to
say?
the radio.
Pick up or the radio, right? So that's
up or
just
radio.
the selector of
And it has two aerial inputs, an earth input. These sets really need an earth as well as an aerial.
even though it ran in batteries.
Even though, yes, because they makes the aerial more efficient, because the aerial is picking up signals relative to the earth. So you need
Something
not only
to
an aerial, you need an earth, so it's got a potential between the two.
two aerials, different sizes.
They can be, long wires, and this would tend to use a big long wire as an aerial, a wire from your chimney down to the ground. A very long wire. The longer the better.
The longer the better. The longer
Yes.
frequency you can
Longer
you can pick
frequency
up. And the output that
This
side.
output here, you could either plug headphones straight on here or a transformer. There's a transformer inside this bottom part here, which you then connect and drive a loudspeaker. These, certainly if you were using headphones, you would have to be quite careful, because these connections here are up at high tension voltage, so there's about 115 volts on there.
I remember from
So-
being a kid, always been warned
Yes.
never to go near the back of a television set.
Yeah. Well, for these
Even after it was
Yeah,
switched off. Yeah.
If you were touching these to plug your headphones in, I would definitely have it switched off before you connect them to it. That looks like it's capacitor that's been changed there.
Yeah, that was fair. I recognise that as being a
That's a modern
capacitor,
one.
whereas
That's
these things just
these
look.
are
Now there's a beautiful mechanical
there's a
linkage
mechanical
into it.
switch here,
Right, what the hell's
which
it
we won't be able to really see it working very well, but
called? Right, there we go.
it's a complicated
Pull back forward.
switch, and you can see the link there going to the other section
Yep.
inside, because it's operating a switch on the opposite side,
It's in there, but the camera
Yeah.
isn't picking it up.
which is, so it does the changing of the long wave
To
to
the
medium wave. effectively,
short wave,
in this
Bob.
case.
Short wave. Yeah.
And it does it through a lot of different connections and taps on coils and stuff. So it's quite a complicated way of switching it. And I think I did notice when I had it open that the volume control had been replaced. We'll do a part 2A.
A part
when
2A?
we remove the chassis
Chassis.
from it.
Okay, right. So big thumbs up from
Thumbs up. just now from-
favourite Bob in the Bob world, and we'll get back to this in a minute. A 3-part Bob upload, ladies and gentlemen. You are getting spoiled today, you really are. Thank you all for watching. Bye.